Kind of Wonderful, and I am here today to help you get started sewing curves. So you have selected to purchase a starter pack off of the Sew Kind of Wonderful website, and you have chosen to make the Urban Runner table runner. So this is just a small quilt. It comes with your purchase of the quick curve ruler. It is the pattern included on the back of the ruler. And I am going to walk you through how to make the Urban Runner little mini quilt. Now, a couple fun facts about Sew Kind of Wonderful. My sister Jenny and I, Jenny and Helen, we are the owners and creators of the tools and patterns that you see on Sew Kind of Wonderful. So the quick curve ruler has been around since 2010, and it has over 100 designs that use this one ruler. Okay, so you have received your starter pack, and the first step is to open your quick curve ruler. So I'm going to walk you through every step of this. So you take this off. Remember, your pattern is included on the paper, so don't throw this away. This is actually the pattern we're going to make. Here's what it tells us and how to cut and how to make our little quilt. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that you have brown paper on the underside of the quick curve ruler. So I'm going to walk you through how to take off the paper. Let me get this in focus right here. I'm just lifting the corner with a straight pin, and then I just slowly peeled back the brown paper. Now, if you bought your quick curve ruler a few years ago, I will tell you that brown paper gets stickier and stickier. So a couple things people have said is that if you heat it up with a blow dryer, it gets a little bit easier to peel off, kind of like a price tag sticker. So there, brown paper comes off. So if it's been a while since you purchased your ruler, just go ahead and give it a little bit of heat from your quick curve ruler, and that'll blow dryer, that'll help. But I'm assuming most of you have just purchased this and you are ready to use it. So peel your brown paper. If you need to put an initial on or label it, it's really good to do it right down here by the flag. Okay, we are ready to cut some fabric. So we're just going to dive right into how to cut for this pattern. This is called Urban Runner. It's 14 inches wide by 52 inches long. And we have 2 fat quarters. Our first instructions say from each fat quarter print, cut 2 8.5 inch length of fat quarter. So a fat quarter comes about 18 inches by 21. So this is the length. So we're going to cut 2 8.5 inch strips off of this. So let me just zoom back a little bit. And a really easy way to do it is to actually layer them together. You could layer them and cut them. I will just show you. So I'm just going to keep it folded. I just kind of line up those selvages. You can see that, most fabric is not cut straight. You can see I have a little bit off here. I've turned my mat over so that I don't have a lot of competing lines. So I will show you how I will, still get 8.5 inches. But it really makes it easier when I'm showing you, not to have all the lines from the mat. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my quick curve ruler. And I'm going to measure over, let's see, let's do it this direction. Measure 8.5. So let's see, 8.5 would be right here. So if you haven't quilted very long, you know, using tools and rotary cutters can all seem very overwhelming. But what I've lined up here is my 8.5 inch mark. I counted over 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 8.5. And then I've just got a straight edge here, and this is the edge I cleaned up. And I'm going to show you an easy way to cut 8.5 inch strip. So I cut, and now I have paused, and I'm going to slide my ruler and line up that 8.5 again, and then go ahead and cut the rest of the way. And that is 1 8.5 inch length of fat quarter. You can see just like that. So let me do one more. So this was my edge. Now if I had my mat turned over with all the lines, I could just line it up and use the lines. But to help you see the tool, the quick curve ruler, and not have competing lines, I've just turned my mat over. So this is a whole different approach to, you know, kind of cheating it and still getting that 8.5 inch cut. Okay, so you can see I got 2 8.5 inch with the fat quarter there. Okay, I fixed the camera so it wouldn't keep shaking. Okay, so I have 2 of these, and I need 2 from each fat quarter. So there's that one. So let's get our other one. I'm really walking you through very slowly here, because when you're new to something, it helps to see all the steps. So again, I'll just kind of show you that same thing. I could have cut these at the same time. Right here, I need to clean up this edge. And here, I'm just lining up my ruler with the edge of the fabric. My ruler is only 7 inches, or I could cut it this way. But let's go ahead and do that same little trick. We put the 8.5 on the cleaned up edge. And then keep your rotary cutter there, move your, okay, there's one. And let me get one more. This fabric I'm using today is called cottage cloth. It is by Free Spirit, and it is fabric that Jenny and I designed. And we have designed some specific quilts that use this fabric. And we think it's very fun. It was inspired by some old jewelry we got from Grandma. Okay, I have 2 of the purple, and I have 2 of the, I'm going to call this one the plum. So 2 purple and 2 plum. All right, I went ahead and turned my mat over because I thought, well, I have to do it again. I should give you both examples. So I've cleaned up my edge here. I'm lining it up on the 0, and I'm going to cut 8.5 inch with the fabric. So I am just going over 8.5 inches, and I can use my mat and go to the 8.5. And then I'm lining up the edge of the quick curve ruler on the 8.5 inch on the mat. That's right here. And then I'm going to cut. Now I need 3 of these. So now I'm using the mat, and we're just going to go over 8.5. So 8.5 plus 8.5 is 16, 17. So if I come over here, here's 17. And so I'm lining up the edge of the quick curve ruler there, cut. And then I need one more 8.5 inch. So we'll go back and line it up on the 8.5 and go to 17, since we already figured out what that measurement was. All right, so from background fabric, cut 3 8.5 inch times width of fabric. So this is the full width of fabric. It's not a fat quarter, it's selvage to selvage. It's the whole width of fabric. And when you see that 8.5 times WOF, that's what that means. Okay, so we are ready to cut some curves. So if we are just following along in our pattern, our very next step says cutting with the quick curve ruler. Layer 8.5 inch strips. And here we're talking about the focus. So not background. So here is where, yes, I'm going to turn my mat over. So we're going to work off of our ruler. So let's just work with 2 of these at a time. So we'll work with the same color. It says to layer the 8.5 inch strips. Notice I've opened them up. I'm lining them up. So I have 2 of them layered here. Just line up those raw edges. I will tell you now, we cut, we sew, and then we square up. So if you're all worried about, oh, that edge wasn't quite on, you've got a lot of steps before we are sewing units together into our mini quilt. But all the steps are really easy. Okay, I have these lined up. And it says, position QCR on fabric with top and bottom edges of fabric centered between dashed lines. So on the quick curve ruler, here's a dash line, here's a dash line. Those dash lines are 8.5 inches apart. I am positioning the fabric between those. So the fabric is here and here. And then this edge is at the 3 inch. So I'm just sliding it over. And this is my selvage edge. And all we're trying to do here is get rid of the selvages. And so this is about at the 3, because I'm just getting rid of selvage here. So let's put it right on 3. We'll follow all the directions. Now cut in the curve cutout with a rotary cutter. I'm using a regular 45 millimeter. Just cut right in your curve slot. If you haven't cut with the quick curve ruler yet, you can practice with your blade closed, and you can feel that you do need to turn your wrist. If you keep hitting the side of this slot, then keep the blade tight against the convex or the hump. Okay, so that cuts this curve. We are discarding this piece. So now you can see we have a curve cut. So now I've turned the pattern over, and now we are going to shift. So I'm keeping it lined up in the, so we were down here. Now we're going to shift the quick curve ruler, and we're lining it up with the dash line, dashed curve line, lined up with the curve that we cut. And then we cut in our curve cutout again. And then we shift and we cut again. And the main thing you're looking at here is making sure that you're lined up in both dashed lines and that the dashed curve is on the curve you just cut. And then you cut again. And notice we're getting 2 of these at a time. and we need to cut 14 total. So we just keep cutting until we have 14 of those curved units. So notice I'm just shifting, keeping it aligned between dashed lines and dash curve. Right now I have, this is my 4th cut, so that is 8. So I need to make 3 more cuts. So as you shift, you're just thinking, yep, line it up, line it up, line up the curve, dash, and cut. And we have other marks on here. We also have a solid curve that we use for some patterns. And we have bold lines out here. So you might start with a 10-inch with the fabric instead of 8.5. So it just depends on the pattern. And you can see I just keep lining it up and just make sure you're using the dashed marks and cutting. And just like that, I have cut 14 C pieces. These are all 14 curves, just like that. That is so fast. If you've ever done freezer templates, and this, it doesn't matter if the fabric's right side up, right side down, because look, if it's like that, you just need the other way, you just turn it around. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with this purple cameo. All right, you saw how quickly I got 14 of our C shapes all cut. I could have even done it faster by layering all 4 fabrics. And as you get good at cutting with the quick curve ruler, you can cut more layers. Oftentimes Jenny and I will, if we have a sharp blade, we will cut 6 to 8 layers of fabric. Okay, so all of our curves are cut there. So one other thing we need to do, we need to cut our background pieces. And for backgrounds, I need to get, I think it's 28, 3.5 by 3.5 by 4, 3.5 by 8.5. Okay, and I need 28 of those. So here I've already cut these with the fabrics. I think it told me to do this earlier, but I got so excited about cutting curves that I actually forgot to cut these, subcut these down. So let's just do that now. It's always good if you're just beginning quilting, or even if you've quilted for a while, to watch somebody else and how they cut, because you might learn something that you're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Okay, I'm cutting 6 layers here. Here I need 3.5, and it doesn't matter. I'm just using the lines on the ruler and cutting 3.5. It's already 8.5. Okay, that is 6, and I need 28 of these. So here is 12. So if you've never worked off your ruler before, I'm just lining up the 3.5 on the fabric and using the straight edge. So 6, 12, 18, 24, and just for efficiency, I could cut all of them, or I could just take that top one off, because I only need 4 more to get to 28. And there we go. Now I have 28, 3.5 by 8.5. Okay, I am going to show you more magic. So now we're going to cut curves on this, because this is our background. So what I'm doing here is, let's see, make sure I show the way the pattern is. So I'm lining up the fabric, and I've just left them in pairs. Right now there's two there, they're wrong sides together, totally fine. Does not matter in this pattern if they're right side up or right side down. I'm centering the fabric between the dashed lines, and I have edge of ruler on edge of fabric. Cut in your curve cutout. That is going to give us two different shapes. And you can see when I separate those, now I have the shapes I need to sew all three of those together. Just like that. So we're going to go ahead and do that with the rest of our background pieces. And that will give us 28A and 28B. So I'll do it one more time for you on camera. So the main thing here is remember to center between dashed lines and then edge of ruler on edge of block. And again, if your blade is hitting the ruler, then keep the blade on the hump or the convex part of the curve. And give it some good shoulder strength to push that blade through. Okay, go ahead and cut all your curves in your backgrounds. One more. We have all of our pieces cut, and this has been, we did it really fast. That is one of the biggest wonderful things about the quick curve ruler is it's actually quick. It's a really fast way to cut curves and cut unique shapes. So you can see I've set them up. This is the block we are making. This is what is in our quilt. So let me show you, now that we've cut curves, you can see here's a seam over here and here. So these are the three parts we sew together. And then we'll sew them into sets of 2, and then we sew them together into a quilt. So next up, sewing the curves. All right, we are ready to sew the curves. The easiest way to do it is to go ahead and set up your 3 pieces. And then when we go to the sewing machine, here's what we're doing. We're going to take the C stands for curve, and we're going to flip it over onto the B. And it's going to be like this. And we're going to have a little 1/4 inch tail. So let me zoom in so you can see that. And then it's also shown on your pattern, right there. So that it's in the pattern, just like all of the, diagrams that show the quick curve ruler. This is your sewing. And we sew with concave on the bottom, convex on top. We leave a little tail. And where those two offset, that's a 1/4 inch from the edge, and we're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way down. So we're going to go to the sewing machine. We're going to do some sewing. Okay, here are our 2 pieces. So concave is on top, concave's on the bottom, convex is on top. And we're going to sew a few anchor stitches, and then we'll sew the curved seam. See that? Okay, notice I sew about 2 or 3 stitches just anchors the two fabrics. I have them right sides together. Hold one in each hand. I don't really grab the bottom one. I kind of move it with my finger. And notice how I lift up the top one. I lift it up a little bit. The edge of my foot is my 1/4 inch. Most important thing, I'm not pulling on either one. And I'm just bringing them together. And as I get over here, I kind of hold them both and sew off. And I like to use my left hand on the top, my right hand on the bottom. And there is our really nice curved seam. Okay, we're gonna do it again. It takes about, I don't know, 5. So I just say, make your speed go slow, you know, really stop, give yourself kind of those like pause. I do have my knee lift. So have it needle down. And then as you sew, bring curved edges together. You can lift the top one. If you need to, you stop, lift your presser foot, let it relax, go back down. And we just keep bringing curved edges together. When you get done, the bottom, you should have about a 1/4 inch tail. If it's a little bit more than that or a little less, that's okay. If you have a really long tail on one of them, then that's the one you're pulling as you sew. So try not to pull. Look at that. I just sewed the C and the B and the A together. So concave always goes on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to show you again because it just takes a couple times where you're like, okay, let me see it again. So we set it up. So the easiest way to set it up is go ahead and put your 2 pieces out that you're going to sew. Flip the convex over on top of the concave. So concaves are down, concaves are underground. And then we're going to, sew a few stitches there. Now this time I'm going to hold my right hand on top and left hand on the bottom because this will work better for some of you. This is not my natural hold. I like the other one better, but for some sewers, this one works. This is how Jenny sews hers. I'm not as fast. So one of these will feel very natural for you. Most sewers tend to hold the other way, the way I did it first. And I just kind of keep bringing them together. You can even pinch it on the side as it sews off. Okay, and notice how slow I'm going. When you get more comfortable, you'll go faster and faster. Okay, so we sewed this side. Now, this is now concave. This is convex. Go ahead, flip convex over onto concave. Cave stays on the ground, caves are underneath, caves are on the bottom. Or look at the picture. There is a picture for this step also in your pattern. I'll do the other hold again. So for this one, I feel like I have to have my fingers pretty close to the presser foot to keep the control. It's just because I'm not used to it. But notice how the bias will just keep working itself through. And I really, really don't pull. You just are positioning those fabrics. And you're just bringing the 2 curves together. And there we are. Nice. Okay, so at this point, you're going to chain piece. You're going to do all the B's and all the C's. So I would do all the B and the C. So you're going to have all of them, both colorways, all sewn. Don't press, and then sew the A piece on. Okay, let's talk about pressing. So here are blocks. We do not need to snip the curve. It's a gentle curve. We are going to start on the back. We're going to lay the curve down the way it wants to go, which is toward the focus fabric there. You can press them the same direction where they both just lay down that way. So you just push them one direction, turn it over, press on the front. Or if you would like, you can press both seams to your focus fabric, or more a concept of pressing the seams to the darker fabric, just like that. So press on the back, flip it over, press on the front. And I have a little water in my iron. That really helps when you're working with bias. So go ahead and press all of the seams, and then we will talk about square up. So when we get to square up, first thing you're going to do is, of course, we read the directions, but you always align the block the way it shows in the pattern. So here you can see my curve is this direction. So I have it set up that way. My quick curve ruler is going this way. If I'm left-handed, turn everything 90 degrees to the left and set it up this way. That way it's safe for you to cut. So you're just making it look like the pattern. All right, we are going to square up our ABC or BCA blocks to 4 inches by 8 inches. So we have, Jenny and I have designed over 200 patterns, and we have squared up every single block in them that has a curved seam. And then we only have one pattern where we don't square up. So squaring up is a big part of what we do, because look, it cleans up all those wonky bias edges and where you're not even here. So let's talk about what we're doing. We are looking at the curved seam, and we're going to put the curved seam the same distance from the edge, both here and here. So I have some Sharpies here, and they have metallic ones, there are black ones, red ones. Just grab something permanent. And what we're looking at here is the quarter mark. So on your quick curve ruler, you have dashed marks on 2 sides. That's 1/4 of an inch from the edge. It's back into the inch. We didn't add another. We're just showing you where 1/4 of an inch from the edge is. This is going to be a 4 by 8 block. So I put a dot, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to get nice and close so that you can see that. It's right where those 2 dashed lines intersect. And then I'm going to come down here to my 8-inch line, and I'm looking at the, oh, let's see, I did that wrong. Yep. And look, this is how you get it off. You get it wet again, and then just rub it. So I actually want that on the top edge. Some of our patterns, we go 1/4 of an inch in where your seam allowance would be. This one, we use the top edge. So 1/4 inch mark on the top edge, and then down here in the 8-inch line, let's make sure we're focused. Right there. We are going to do that 1/4 inch mark again, just on the 8-inch line. Okay. So now, position your pressed block. Put the 2 marks we just made right on the curved seam. I have my top one right here and my bottom one right here. And that's what this is telling you right here. Now, check, can I get 4 inches by 8 inches? Yes, I can. What about this curve over here? We're just not going to worry about that because you for sure can get these on, and those are always going to be really close. You do have a little bit of play like this. So if you want to center it, if you have a directional fabric, you can always rotate that a bit. But over the years, Jenny and I have found out that you can center, you can get two points to center nicely. But once we start throwing 3 and 4 in, it's better to focus on 2. Okay, now I'm going to trim 2 sides. Trim the side, trim the top. Rotate my block. Don't rotate the ruler, just rotate the block. And now put the quick curve ruler back down and line up trimmed edges, the ones you just cut off, on 4 and 8, and cut off whatever is left because you already decided where everything was living. And now you have this perfectly squared up rectangle with 2 curves sewn in it. All right, let's do it again because we need to see things more than once. So say it with me. We're going to line up those 1/4 inch marks on the curved seam here and here. Adjust, check again. Great, can we get 4 by 8? Yes. Go ahead and trim 2 sides. Move the ruler, rotate the block, put the ruler back down. We didn't rotate the ruler at all. Now we line up trimmed edges on 4 and 8 and cut off whatever is left. All right, what if you are left-handed? Okay, if you are left-handed, just so you can make some safe cuts with your ruler, you can do this from the very beginning on any cutting. Just turn the pattern 90 degrees to the left, and then you're going to set it up exactly how it is shown with it turned 90 degrees to the left. So then I would have my quick curve ruler facing this direction. Put my dot right on the curved seam. And then I would trim left side and across the top. So let's do that, even though I can't do a left hand cut. I'll do it with my right, but you'll know what I'm doing here. Okay, so I've just cut with my left hand. Now lift, rotate 180, and then put it back down and make sure you can get and put trimmed edges on 4 and 8, and then trim whatever is left is extending beyond the ruler. You're going to go up the left side and across the top. And that is what you're going to do to all 28 blocks. So go ahead and square up all your blocks. All right, I have a bunch of my blocks squared up. And now we are going to start putting them together into pairs. So you could lay out a whole row. You can sew them into pairs. So I'll show you both. So if you sew 14 pairs like this, so just have one of each fabric, then we can go ahead and put them together either like this, or you would do it where you have the other color and they alternate, and it makes a really cool design. So at this point, go ahead and the pattern says to sew them into pairs. So let's go ahead and do that. And it's just a straight seam. So we're going to sew that, and you're just going to go ahead and do regular 1/4 inch, and then we're going to press that seam open. Okay, here is my 2 blocks sewn together, and go ahead and press that seam open. This will help eliminate the bulk that can build up in the corners from having a lot of curved seams coming together. So just like that, we're going to press that seam open. Jenny and I both long arm quilts, and when you press a seam open, it really flattens out an area, and so you can treat it as a unit, and you don't get a shadow there. Pressing is one of those things that as a quilter, you can actually do it however you like. We will suggest in the pattern if we think one way is better than another, but this is your creative experience, and you can press your seams, all of them open. You can press them to the side. You can do it any way you want. All right, we have all of our blocks sewn together into pairs. So what we're doing is we're putting 2 pairs together. So now we'll sew those together, and then our next row, we place them in opposite orientation, where now we have the purples together. So we sew these together, press seam open, sew, press seam open, and then we'll sew the rows together. So go ahead and do that. All right, at this stage you can see I have my 2 rows sewn together, and I can line these up, and you can kind of audition your sets and kind of find the curves that match the best. So here, remember how we made sure that the center curve was in the right spot, and our outside curve might be off, you know, we didn't worry about it, but now we can pin that. If you really want that curve to match, go ahead and pin that intersection, and that will get your curves to line up nicely. I will just sew it together because I know it's going to be close enough for me. I am one of those, oh, it's close enough people. All right, I have sewn it. I am going to press this seam open, and I wanted you to just see, you know, that is just a really slow, you know, it's just tedious, but it really does help manage the curve in those layers where they come together, so that when you long arm or quilt it yourself or hand quilt it, if anybody still does that. And then, you know, let's look at my curves. Okay, so 3 of 4 curves lined up really nice. That's a nice one. Oh, we got lots of curves. These line up. That one's off by about 1/8. There, there, and there. This is because of bias. Now, if I pinned that and eased that, I could get that to work better. I'm not going to stress about it because I have sewn so many of these. I know what happens. As soon as I quilt it, so let me show you the original. And I pieced this one also. There we are, we're off. As soon as it gets quilted, I know all of this disappears. That one's off. and that you really don't ever see that again. And again, it's not being judged. It's for me. I understand that. You know, if you're doing something where you need to pin it for a better result, then you should definitely pin. But you can see how lovely it is, and you don't even focus on if one is a little bit off. Okay, another thing to talk about. Here we have a gap. That is by design. We did not want you to stress about getting this point here. So there should be about a 1/2 inch gap right here and here. And on some patterns, we get a perfect point because that's what we're going for. On this one, that is not our goal. Our goal here is to sew curves and get comfortable with sewing curves. Okay, we have just sewn up the Urban Runner little quilt. And you can tell that you could just keep making more and more blocks, and that, you know, you could make a bigger quilt. This is perfect for a table, for a bed. It's really great practice for sewing curves. This beautiful quilt behind me is Floral Felicity. This uses a different tool, the Wonder Curve ruler. But what's really great about all of our curve piecing rulers is that we're using the same techniques for each ruler. We always cut easily, sew with the concave on the bottom, convex on top, and then we'll square up that block every time. So that is our Urban Runner tutorial. And we are really proud of you for taking the leap, sewing curves, you know, finding this very easy method for sewing curves, the Sew Kind of Wonderful way, you know, where we just cut the curve, sew the curve, and square it up. No pinning, no snipping, no centering. So we're really excited for you. You now have the quick curve ruler, and all of the patterns that use this tool will have that green QCR button on it. Okay, now there's one more little video in this starter pack, and it's the one called Metro Medallion, and I'll show you the basic block for sewing, cutting and sewing the Metro Medallion block. So go ahead and click on that Metro Medallion tutorial when you're ready for that one.